Well, as usual, Stephen A. Smith's got something to say, and this time it's about his beloved Alabama Crimson Tides. Guys, about as for Alabama as he is against the Cowboys. It's a whole shtick, which is fine. It's entertainment. I get it. And here's what he had to say the other day to Paul Feinbaum, who is also going to pick Alabama to win this game, which is fine. Whatever. He said, Paul Feinbaum has been very disrespectful to me the other day at First Take. And what are we what are we even talking about? He says he's been very disrespectful about Alabama, who's going to handle their business against Georgia. You hear me, Georgia Bulldogs? You hear me? Alabama is coming, even without Nick Saban. All right, look. So there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, first of all, this is completely and utterly, purely entertainment. And for those of us, I didn't catch this one live. I had recorded it and saw the foolishness as it happened. But you know, plenty of people in the universe are definitely picking against Georgia, and that's fine. It makes a lot of sense to be honest with you. I mean, you start talking about the way they played at Kentucky, which I don't think has any real bearing on how they'll play at Alabama, but I digress. Really, the biggest thing is you're playing on the road, and the SEC in front of about 100,000 people. It'll feel like 100 million people. There's about 100,000 people. It's not anything these guys haven't dealt with before. Carson Beck's played at Neyland, and that was a very raucous place. Auburn was probably a more complicated crowd because of the situation Georgia was in. So it's not like Georgia's ever done this before. But yeah, there's definitely a tug because of the way that Georgia performed at Kentucky. Bettors have moved this line from about 3.5 or 4 to 2.5. So that's what it's kind of silly to me every time I go. I don't read the comments very much, to be honest with y'all. Sorry about that, but I frankly don't have time to. I mean, when you start talking about Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the message board over at dogpost.com, where you should be at least a member for a while. Try us out for $1. See what sort of high quality content you're getting there that you're not going to get anywhere else, including some very good posters who, are based in reality rather than, Mars or Venus or wherever half the people on social media are. You can get a link to that in one of our stories. They're all over the place. $1 for 30 days. Try it out now. You get through the Florida game. So the thing that's kind of silly after a while is everybody's picking against us. Las Vegas isn't. I mean, they're setting those lines like that for a reason, and that the line has moved some is just indicative of money going in. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was set incorrectly. I mean, we saw the Clemson line go from, I think it was 13.5 to 11. That went too far low. So, at 1.5, 2.5 point, a half a point is a total coin flip. Even a point, I would say, is not quite a coin flip. But once you get to 2.5 or so, the better team has been sort of established in all of this. But with the shenanigans that go on, and the first letter in ESPN is entertainment. The shenanigans they're doing a great job of promoting this game. That's what Paul and Stephen A are. That's what kind of people I think forget. Their biggest properties are the NFL, and then the NBA, and then probably the SEC. And maybe I don't think the NBA. I mean, I don't think the SEC is bigger than the NBA. People watching this will, but they're incorrect. And so what you're getting from people that are on television specifically is, if I were ESPN and I'm trying to get 10 million viewers for this game, I'm talking about this game as much as I can. To as many people as I can, and I don't. The numbers for the SEC network, we don't get those. It's not a metered network. I think they have internal numbers, maybe, but I couldn't tell you how many people watch Paul Feinbaum. But by the amount of vitriol he gets, I would say it's quite a few people. Stephen A. Smith, it can fluctuate between 750,000 people and 1 million people a day, and then that's just on linear television. That doesn't account on the other stuff. On digital, it's probably all over the place. Going, we get seen by millions of people because of social, and so those guys are doing what their job is, which is to create stir the pot, particularly in a game that is this close with honestly the two of the three or the two biggest brands in college football. Michigan is a huge brand. Do not get me wrong. They are not Ohio State. They're just not. I don't know why, but they're not. They've been more successful than Ohio State lately, but there's something, Ohio State brings with it. Like I don't know, but they are a bigger name than Michigan, all perhaps narrowly, but they are a bigger name. Alabama and Georgia, Alabama certainly was the bigger name. I think maybe they probably still are. I'm not sure though anymore. And so what you're seeing from ESPN is a great job of guys talking about the game and it having no bearing on the outcome of the game. This is what we do too. And yet people watch. Why? Because they want to know what people think. It doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. It's irrelevant frankly, it's irrelevant what the players and coaches think to some degree too, because you have to go out and play. And, if you're a defeated person, maybe that's when it matters. But I can assure you, Bama and Georgia are both going in this game thinking that they're going to win. I don't know why either of them would think that they're going to lose. I mean, they're both capable of winning this game. Georgia's going to have to play better than they did against Kentucky. I don't think they got to play better than they did against Tennessee Tech or Clemson. Alabama's going to have to play better than they did against South Florida. I don't think they have to play better than they did against Western Kentucky, or a little bit better than they did against Western Kentucky at the beginning. I thought that was whatever. But, I don't think they have to play better than they did against Wisconsin or Western Kentucky. I mean, they've scored 40 points in every single game they play. They have not played very good defenses, that's for sure. Georgia has. They have played two teams that have very good defenses in Clemson and Kentucky. And people say, well, what are you talking about with Kentucky? I mean, what I would say to you if you're asking that question is, are you actually watching the games, or are you just going on reputation? Because, honestly, Kentucky's reputation should be better in defense, considering they're the number 6 team in the country in defense. They've played 4 games. I don't know if they've allowed 300 yards in a game. So that's a really good defense. Alabama's at 13. Let me look where Wisconsin is. So Wisconsin's given up about 300 yards a game. Wisconsin had a rough start to this season with their opener against it was a directional school from the South. I don't recall. Oh, I'm wrong. It was a directional school from Michigan. They just did not play well against Western Michigan that Friday night before the Georgia Clemson game. And Wisconsin's not where they need to be to compete with the likes of Alabama, and that was not surprising. But I think South Florida is a pretty bad defense. Now one of the reasons why is they played 2 really good offenses, which are Alabama and Miami. They're giving up 400 yards a game. Well, Kentucky played a really good offense in Georgia and slowed them down. So when you're a good defense, you do that. I think there's more we can find out, to be honest with you, about Alabama in this game than Georgia. And here's why. You could say that either way, to be honest. But here's why I think, I'll make that claim, which is that Bama has not played a league game, although they've been on the road. Wisconsin, everything that could have gone wrong for Wisconsin did. Namely, Alabama showing up, A. B, losing your quarterback in the first quarter, not great. But they were never going to beat Alabama, man. That just was not going to happen. So we are going off of data from 2 weeks ago, which is fine, because 2 weeks before that, coming out of the Clemson game, you would have thought Georgia was, on the next level. I mean, I'm old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when Urban Meyer said that Georgia had no flaws. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? So there's a lot of jibber jabber, and that's fine. That's part of my job and our job. But the truth of the matter is that who will win Saturday night will come down to who actually executes better than anybody else. I know that's boring. But it's not boring when you're on the field and you're getting your ass whipped on the perimeter and you can't move the ball. That's what happened to Georgia against Kentucky. It's not fun when you're turning the ball over left and right like Alabama did against South Florida. So execution does matter. It makes a huge difference. that 42-16 game that Alabama won, seemingly going away, they were winning 21-16 in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes to go in the game. So, and why? Why did that happen? What was going on in that game? They were sloppy. Like, it was not what I expected to see in any way or at all. You know, the turnovers, I think it was all fumbles, but I don't have it right in front of me here like I should. It was bad news bears constantly for Alabama. I mean, in terms of keeping control of the ball. I mean, fumble in the third quarter. I mean, they closed. The amazing part is they closed the game with 4 straight touchdowns, which is awesome. But before that, they went punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown. And here's where they got into trouble. Second quarter, bleeding into the fourth. Punt, halftime, punt, fumble, fumble. I mean, you play Kennesaw State, it's going to be close like that. So it really is about, are you going to play the right way? Milroe has played well this season. He is really going to be problematic. I don't know why. I think people don't watch these games. I think one reason why I'm picking Georgia is because I do watch the games. I've watched enough. Either team can win this game, but the reason why I'm picking Georgia is I just think they're the better team. Now, if they don't execute or Alabama forces them not to execute, they're not going to win. If they go over there and play the way that they did against Kentucky, they're not going to win. I mean, I don't see it at least. So, but if you're not watching, I mean, Jalen Milroe has been pretty good this season. I mean, what he did against Wisconsin, it was like taking candy from a baby. I mean, it was just too easy for him. 12 of 17, 3 touchdowns, ran for 75 yards, threw for 196. I mean, it just was those guys couldn't run around with. I mean, it was not dissimilar from Western Kentucky when he was 7'9", 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's been super impressive this season. The Wisconsin and Western games mimicked each other. Again, he didn't play as well against South Florida because Alabama didn't play as well. I mean, he threw for 62%. The yardage was there, but he didn't have any run game really to speak of. He was sacked 3 times. Now, Jalen Miller is going to get sacked. That's not really indicative of was he really pressured. And Jalen Walker is going to be a critically important person in this game. So for all of that, now Paul knows who Jalen Walker is, probably, almost certainly. And I know Paul knows who Jalen Milroe is. Stephen A. Smith has no idea who who Jalen Walker is. Probably doesn't know Mikael Williams. Perhaps should. He will know who he is over time. But those two guys, particularly if Williams is playing in this game, they're going to really matter. They may not tilt it towards Georgia, but they're going to really matter. Another reason why I think Georgia's going to win this game, and again, when I say win this game, we're talking slightly more than a coin. It's not a coin flip. I mean, Georgia probably should win this game, but it's not like some certainty like up in Kentucky. They definitely should have won that game. They were going to win that game. There was no point in time during that game where I was like, Georgia's going to lose. No, at no point. I said that after the game and so forth and riding home. But when I lost my train of thought because I was talking so much. But when you watch Alabama's explosion and all of that stuff, Georgia's not dealt with that yet. I mean, Clemson wasn't explosive like that. Clemson has been explosive since. So that's what's the fun part of September. That's where the whole they ain't played nobody Paul comes from. I mean, like, you can't win with people, fan bases at all. Is Clemson, my opinion, NC State's trash. Okay. I just don't think they're good. And, was Clemson's struggle against Georgia about Clemson not playing well or Georgia? I mean, I think it was Georgia, a lot of that. So, I don't have any anticipation that Alabama's not scoring a touchdown in this game. That's just not happening, y'all. I mean, they're going to score. They are really explosive at times. Their running backs are good too. But you've got to contain Milroe as much as you can. And that's hard. I mean, Kirby was talking about that on Monday. He was talking about how sometimes even off schedule, they make huge plays. Yeah, because they have a complete freak as quarterback. The question is, can you make him play the way he did against South Florida, the way he did against Georgia last year, the way he did against Texas A&M last year, and I think Arkansas last year? Can you make him not play great? And if you can, you got a pretty good shot to win. Because the defense for Alabama is not what it was. Now that has changed. That's a little bit different than it was. They're still really good, but they're not top 5. So there's some opportunities there for Georgia. We'll see. But the way that the offense played this last week, I mean, that's not going to work. You can be 13th in total defense and totally dominate the game. So Georgia's got to get their explosive players out in space. And how do you do that? By blocking on the perimeter successfully, not sort of blocking or olaying or whiffing or look like a matador. You have to actually block someone. You have to have desire to do that. It's not easy to do. So, we'll just see. I mean, this is not a referendum game. It's going to feel like it, and I may contradict that statement Saturday night. But it's hard to have a referendum on anything on September 28th. I mean, this is 1990s Florida, Tennessee, where somebody was getting eliminated from the race. Everybody won't shut up about how Texas and Georgia could play 3 times. Alabama and Georgia can play 3 times this season. I mean, I'm not sure I would pick that right now, but Alabama and Georgia could play 3 times this season. Tennessee's kind of lurking around too, by the way. I mean, Tennessee and Georgia could play 3 times this season. Like, you've got some real Georgia and Ole Miss, but the cream's going to rise to the top, and we're going to see Saturday night if this Georgia team is what we think they are or thought they were, or if it was this ghost of what happened at Commonwealth Stadium. We'll see.